Okay, Year 12, this will be part 2 of our analysis of the Rowling speech. And where we left off before is we were looking at this extended metaphor of the path of life, which again appealed not only to the students in the audience, but also their parents, that, at a certain point, people need to start taking ownership for their choices. Then she starts talking about poverty. What's more is I cannot criticize my parents for hoping that I would never experience poverty. The words poverty and poor are repeated over and over again, and this is an emotive appeal. We all know that with poverty come immense struggles. And she highlights this in her hyperbole and alliteration. It means 1,000 petty humiliations and hardships. In this, she is not wrong, but the audience might be wondering, their interest might be piqued. Why is the most successful author in the world, who has more money than the Queen, at this point at least, why is she talking about poverty? What experience has she had with poverty? Well, remember my roller coaster analogy before? We're about to hit a bit of a dip. So come along with me. We have a short and emotive statement that follows. What I feared most for myself at your age was not poverty, but failure. And this is another ironic paradox, because how could failure be worse than poverty? Well, we're about to find out. She begins the next paragraph second person, at your age. And coming from somebody with the lifetime experience of Rowling, this is where she establishes her ethos. In spite of a distinct lack of motivation at university, where I'd spent far too long, blah, 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 I had a knack for passing examinations, and that for years had been the measure of success. Then she talks to the audience about their privilege. I am not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well educated, you have never known hardship or heartbreak. Talent and intelligence never yet inoculated anyone against the caprice of the fates. We have the metaphor of immunity. We are not immune. However talented and intelligent we are, life is going to get in our way. Now, again, this the caprice of the fates is an intertextual reference to Greek mythology, which Rowling no doubt learnt about when she scuttled along the classics corridor. And it provides a warning. The three fates in Greek mythology are the people who control just that, people's fates. So before people are born, the fates have already decided when they were born, to whom they will be born, the course of their life, and when they die. So this serves as a bit of foreshadowing. However, the fact that you are graduating from Harvard suggests that you are not very well acquainted with failure. You might be driven by a fear of failure quite as much as a desire for success. Indeed, your conception of failure might not be too far from the average person's idea of success. So again, this is a connection to the audience. She knows who she's talking to. She's not talking to a graduating Year 12 class. She is talking to the cream of the crop, the best of the best. And what she's saying to them is that even though you are probably not very well acquainted with failure, it's going to happen. And here, in the final paragraph of this page, she humbles herself. She admits to her own shortcomings in an anecdote. She lists her failures. There is an accumulation of failure. I had failed on an epic scale. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded. I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being, I think homeless is on the next page. So in listing her failures, now, as her future self, as a wildly successful author, creates a sense of pathos and ethos. It creates a sense of credibility. By accumulating her failures, the audience is, well, at first, they're intrigued. How has this wildly successful person got to where she is from a place of abject poverty and hardship? They want to know more, but also there is a sense of admiration there. She has experienced failure on a scale unlike any that the Harvard graduates would have ever seen. And here is what she wants them to know about it. The fears my parents had for me, that I had for myself, had both come to pass, and by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I know. So again, she referred to her parents quite a bit in the first part of the speech, how they wanted different for her because they feared the poverty that they had struggled with in their own childhood. So this is ironic. So the fear that the parents had come true. So she's hit rock bottom. But how does she turn it around? The audience knows she does. But this is the bit where they want to know, okay, so what did you do? And what she does is she uses binary opposites. So she says, the period was dark. I had no idea there was going to be what the press has since represented as a fairy tale resolution. I had no idea how far the tunnel extended. And for a long time, any light at the end was a hope rather than a reality. So we have the imagery through symbolism, the dark and the light, the binary opposites. And then she leads with a rhetorical question. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Again, the paradox. Yeah, why do you, Joanne? Well, she answers, because failure meant stripping away of the inessential. Then we have quite a lot. Again, it is overall an anecdote, lots of personal pronouns, lots of I believed, I, me, I. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life is a paradoxical metaphor. It is inspirational. There is nothing we love so much as an underdog succeeding story, and that's exactly what we've got here. And she's used it in her metaphor. So she switches from talking about herself to addressing the audience. You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. So again, failure is inevitable. You do need to embrace it. This is true of Rowling. It is true of her audience, the parents, the professors, the graduates, and I would suggest that it is true of everyone. It is an absolute truism. It is logos. Everyone is going to fail, but we learn from them. And then she starts with the paradox. It gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have learnt no other way. So the anaphora of failure reaffirms her message. Failure was the greatest lesson she had ever learned, greater than the ones that she learnt at university, because she could pass the examinations without doing much work. You can't get away with that with failure. I also found out that I had friends whose value was truly above the price of rubies. This is metaphorical imagery. Again, friends are highly, highly valuable. It is somewhat cliche, but again, I think here that it fits, because when you are talking about poverty, juxtaposing that with an image of riches, of rubies, does show their value in a very vivid way. Anyway, so now she switches back, second person. She goes, me, you, me, you, me, you. So this is the you bit. The knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from setbacks that you are ever after securing your ability to survive. You will never know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested, and it has been worth more than any qualification I've ever earned. Again, the paradox. The truism here, the logos inherent within these paradoxes, are the lesson that she wants us to learn. Now, she has learnt these lessons the hard way. What she wants for her audience is to come away learning from her own experience. So given a time turner, again, an allusion to the Harry Potter series, I would tell my 21-year-old self that happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisition or achievement. And again, alluding to her own work here, and then talking about what she would let herself know, creates a sense of ethos. It creates a sense of authority. She has lived experience twice the age of the university graduates, and this is what she wants them to learn. The roller coaster takes another dip here, and hoo boy, what a dip it is. I think this would be the deepest dip, because now that she's spoken about the crushing poverty that she herself experienced and how she rebuilt her life from rock bottom, she is now going to show us the experiences she had with people who were even less fortunate than she. Now you might the thing that I chose, my second theme, the importance of imagination, so alliteration, because the part it played in rebuilding my life, but that is not wholly so. Though I personally would defend bedtime stories, blah, blah. I have learnt to value imagination in a much broader sense. It is not only the uniquely human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the fount of all invention and innovation. It is arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity. It is the power that enables us to empathize with humans whose experiences we have not shared. So again, the repetition of imagination, the alliteration of the it sound signals a change in tone. She's gone from being passionate and motivational to very deadly serious, ladies, and I do mean that in the most literal sense. So then she starts talking about the formative experience of having worked at Amnesty International. If you know anything about Amnesty International, you will know that they work with people who suffer injustice on a grand scale. Here we go. There we go. So we have the anecdote about she talks about she worked at the Amnesty International's headquarters in London, and then we have this evocative, confronting imagery. Lots of first-person language. Again, it is an anecdote. There in my little office, I read hastily scribbled letters smuggled out of totalitarian regimes by men and women who were risking imprisonment to inform the outside world of what happened to them. I saw photos of those who had disappeared. I opened handwritten eyewitness accounts of summary trials, executions, kidnappings, and rapes. So we have this accumulation of horrors, and it creates a sense of pathos within the audience. Now, Rowling, again, has suffered crushing poverty and was able to bring herself out of that. And that is the importance of failure. But again, the audience is wondering, well, how does imagination come into righting the worst possible wrongs? Again, she captures their attention. They want to know more. She talks about ex-political prisoners, people who had lost everything. And then she again focuses on what is essentially herself. I shall never forget the African torture victim. He trembled uncontrollably as he spoke into the camera about the brutality inflicted. He was a foot taller than I was and seemed fragile as a child. So we have the simile there and the paradox to show how completely beaten down and crushed by his experiences this man was. However, there is another paradox. When she walked him back to the station, he took my hand with exquisite courtesy and wished me future happiness. This person who had witnessed such trauma and horror and who was still feeling the horrible ill effects wished her happiness. He still wanted better for other people. And this leads into another experience she had. Somebody whose mother had been seized and executed. This paragraph ends with a very, very short clause. It is a motive. His mother had been seized and executed. So it is a motive. It creates a sense of pathos and ethos. I know, I have seen these horrible, awful things. And then we get the anaphora. Every day I was working with these people, I saw it. Every day I saw more evidence of evils. And yet, we have an antithesis. The roller coaster is rising. I also learned more about human goodness at Amnesty than I had ever known before, which again, a paradox. The antithesis here, evil actually causes kindness. And again, the audience has sat there wondering, how could evil possibly cause anything akin to kindness? Amnesty mobilizes thousands of people who have never been tortured or imprisoned. The power of human empathy leading to collective action saves lives and frees prisoners. The power of human empathy, and this is where she leads into her thesis on the importance of imagination outside the realm of narrative. Ordinary people join together in huge numbers to save people they do not know and will never meet. We again have the paradox that in play. Ooh, that's nearly my 15 minutes up. I'll wrap it up here. The paradox displays the importance of social justice, which in itself is the result of imagination. My small participation in that process was the most humbling, and here again she humbles herself, this mighty author telling her audience that she was only a small part in this much larger, more significant experience.